Good morning, everyone. We're about to get started. Thank you, everyone, yesterday for an amazing day. And before we get going with some of the presentations we have planned for this morning and afternoon, we're going to start our day off in a good way. So if I can ask Elder Sam Achpanichkum again to come up and say a morning prayer for us.
Good morning to all of you. Hope you had a good night, a good night rest. I know I did, and another beautiful morning that we're given today to acknowledge the gift of the Creator of what you see around us, and the path that we're creating for those who are coming behind us, the young ones and those who are not here yet. It is part of why we are here, and part of the work that all of us are doing is creating a better world. Sometimes it feels like it's a very monumental task to do that. What you see happening to us, to the world and around us. But there still has to be that voice that's out there for the young people to hear, and for those ones that are coming, and also to remember to those ones that are left behind, that never got a chance to come home and be with their parents and come to their homelands to be for the rest. And it's quite a burden, I think, to carry for all of us. And we look at each day, and there's always seems to be new obstacles that are put in our way. You know, they don't want us to be who we are, what we were meant to be. So they try each and every way to deter us from reaching that. But I think we remember the words of our parents, our grandparents, and how they fought so hard to ensure that we knew who we were and where we came from. I went to 3 different residential schools growing up when after when they finally took me in 1965. The first one that I went to was in McIntosh, and it burned down February of that year. So they sent me to Cecilia Jeffrey in Kenora. The next year they sent me to Fort Albany, St. Anne's, and it got flooded. I had nothing to do with all those things. It's just the way things happen. And so, yeah, and after St. Anne's, they sent me to a little town in a public school just to see if anything else would happen. But it was all right. And and a couple of years later, they sent me back to St. Anne's and finished my finished near the end of the residential schools. And it's been, when I look back and what my parents taught me, the way my parents raised me, with my, as I was saying yesterday, I spent most of my time out on the land with my parents. But there were times when we would come to the community, and I would go, and my mother would tell me to go see the elders and see if they need anything. So I would always go visit them and chop wood, get water, or sometimes if I got a rabbit or a partridge, I would give that to them. And they in turn told me stories about the land, about history, about our people, and so they were my first teachers. And I'm very, I feel very privileged to have that opportunity to sit with them and for them to share their stories. They even gave me a name. They called me Kabinagwasit. Is what the old people call me when I was young. And I think in the Creator's way, there were things that happened in that we do ceremonies today when we go out. When I was 12 or 13, I was out in the bush. I'm not going to say I got lost, but I got stuck out in the bush for 4 days. It was around this time, actually. It was on Thanksgiving Day, way back in 1965, around there, 66. And I was out there for 4 days. And it snowed and it snowed and it snowed for 3 days. And the snow was pretty high. But I survived out there. No matches, no food, nothing. I just slept under the tree. And there was a little, I was my friend. And I didn't want to leave him, so I stayed with him because he couldn't walk anymore. And so I had visitors when I was there. And they would always come and see me in the evening. They would feed me. They bought apples every day. There's 13 of them that came. They would bring me apples and they feed me. And today there were these little, what they call that, Memengweshuk, or the little people. So they would all come walking. And honor them each and every day. When I do ceremonies, I put an apple out for them and just to honor them and thank them for that time that they helped me. Later, I found out that my mother, that was her name, Little People Woman, Memengo Shikwe. So she sent them to look after me, take care of me. I kept them pretty busy, in my younger years. Well, I kind of settled down. When I finally reached 60, I kind of quieted down a bit and live a quiet life. Try to, anyway. And so, in some way or another, we are touched by our parents, our teachings, and somehow, sometimes we don't realize it that these are shown to us and given to us. So it's important to recognize and to see those things. And I'm glad that our people are slowly returning to that, to doing those ceremonies. In the Anishinaabe way, we have 7 rites of passage that the children go through from the day they were born to the day till they reach puberty. And so, and I see that the parents are slowly doing that now. It's good to see that. Because that way it is ensured to them that they knew who they were, where they come from. And that's very important for them to learn that. Also learning about the land, the names of the rivers, the lakes, and all of those things. They all have stories. And when I traveled with my father, he would tell me those things. He would point out the place and say, this is what happened here, and he would tell me a story about the name of that river. And it's very important that our young people learn this. Our people learn those things. And so I still have very vivid memories of those places and the names of those places and the stories of those when I was growing up, places that I traveled to. And it's because it is our land. We will never forget where we come from and what the Creator gave us. When you look at a map today, all you see is English names, colonial names. They're trying to erase your history. Is what they're doing. So when they ask our young people 30, 50 years from now, do you know the name of that lake, that river? If they don't know, then they say, well, how can you say it's yours if you don't know anything about it? But if you can tell a story about it, then they still know that it's yours. And so, and that's important to learn that. And that is the foundation. The first 13 years of my life, of how I grew up, is the foundation of how how I live my life. And I mean, I've encountered a lot of struggles through my years, but I'm still here and I still have my sanity, I think, a little bit left. And still maintain, enjoy life, and one of the good thing that came out of those residential schools is that's where I met my wife, and she followed me around. I chased her around for a while, and we went off on our separate ways for a while. And we met each other again. They said, "You find anybody? And you want to get married? Sure, okay. You want to have children? Oh yeah, we can do that too." So life is not so. It is what you make of it. What is given to you. Everything is not all tied up in a nice ribbon and bow. Not everything is good. Whatever's in your heart is how you create the good things in life. And so we walked together for over 53 years. And she left me last year, a year and a half ago. And she was sick for quite a long time. And she went for 8 years. And that's a person, even though he went that long, that never really changed how she looked at things. She was the same, and she was stubborn. And I remember in the class one day, the teacher was trying to make her do something. She said no, she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't budge at all. Says, "I'm going to marry that woman." And yeah, and that's how she went through life. So if she said something, that was it. There was no need to say any more words. So that's how the way it was going to be. And yeah, and we were blessed with 6 children. I think we have about 20 grandchildren, about 10 great grandchildren. And it kept us busy throughout the years. And I can say that I really enjoyed my journey. I learned a lot of things. I met a lot of beautiful, nice people. And there's a man there that I met way back in high school, Mr. Leonard. He was a young playboy then. He was the one. He was giving lessons to Hugh Hefner on how to be a playboy. Yeah, and so very few people left that I met a long time ago that are still around, and I'm eternally grateful for those that walk in my path. And each day when I get up in the morning, I could say a lot of bad things, I guess, and negative things, but sometimes I choose to look at the good side of life, and it's good. And I walk and try to walk in that way. And so with that, eventually I will get to a prayer for all of us. And just something to think about and put you in that frame of mind as you walk today, as you hear the stories and as you listen to look at those things from your heart. Open your mind, open your heart to hear those words. And we offer prayers out of sacred fire going out there so that we can say those things. We can say the words that need to be said. And hopefully that in some point it reaches and touches all of us in some way, so that we will continue our work in a good way, and that we remember all of those who walked with us, will always walk with us. Ahabozo Shemanito, Kawaskan the sinners you can me go. Makwando them. Amiga Shemanito, who I know way Gagishika Kitiko. Mr. Gagonwe, or on the man need to go. Napchinagonwe, so when you gave a need to go. Sagi way we need to go. Muksenda need to go. Jamin Segway, Musege go need to go. We got near Papas and the man gave one gash mamu beyond need to go. A book send the man need to go. Job and the man, you know, the what with the I'm sure my God would have shown need to go. Wega no toyang I to wega we was toyang we hanin ke enija mosewa di to go. The mama panamana neke udanang kagi bisa kagi biawa di to go vino. Ega ni ka ni ke angi to go. Kagi bua ujung to hi to go then we magan nanek hi to go. Them show mus nanek no mus nanek hi to go ege. Sege unwe kagi bagitin mo ati to go. We ege we jini boyang we no we kagi shega ki to go. The mama kandamang we min mat suin. Ah, amigos. Hi, amigos. Hi. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, for starting us off in a good way. I'd like to now call up Shelley Clark to offer a song. There she is. Hey.
Sego ani bonjour. Shelley ne Jungets, Gayakono, ni Wandina Joda, Duistaway, ni Wanjita Lado, Oswego, Grand River Territory. My English name is Shelley. I'm Cayuga Snipe Clan from Grand River Territory, Six Nations. I just like to acknowledge all the spirits that are here and our ancestral spirits that are here. I was out in the teepee this morning and really had a lot of prayers out there and just praying for everyone and remembering the folks back home that couldn't make it. And I just like to say thank you that I'm a guest in your territory. And I'd like to offer a song to the water this morning. The water has really been on my mind lately. I've been working with the water around here, and I will continue to do the work. So this is a water song written by Val King from New Credit Reserve.
Thank you, Shelley. And just to recap a little bit yesterday, I don't know if any folks in the room that are new this morning, but my name is Micah Patterson. I am the data librarian and researcher with the Survivor Secretariat. Yesterday, the theme focused mostly on records and documents and the importance of that, as well as starting to wrap our minds around some of the existing discourse around there and some of the principles like OCAP that we can start to utilize and implement into some of our practices. We heard from myself and the work of the Survivor Secretariat and the ways in which we're working within that realm of Indigenous data sovereignty. We heard from Senator Brian Francis and some remarks regarding the report Missing Records, Missing Children, and just some of the setbacks that we're still facing at the federal level. We heard from lead researcher with the Chief Coroner of Ontario, Mark Makasock, and some of the methods in which they're implementing to ensure that the investigations that are taking place are happening in collaboration with community and not removing community. So just really showing the ways in which institutions are really assisting in this way in a positive positive way. We also heard from Leslie McGregor from First Nations Information and Governance Center and the principles of OCAP. She really laid it out in terms that I think were really digestible for everyone in the room. We were also able to hear from Jeff Ward, the CEO of Anamiki from Victoria, British Columbia, and really providing some of those technical solutions, especially surrounding conversations of possession that many of us working in this realm struggle with in terms of retaining our data. And then lastly, we were able to hear from Ryan Shackleton, again, CEO and founder of No History. And he really forced us to look at the failings at the federal level and some of the considerations that we doing this work have to consider moving forward. Today, we are continuing on in practice. So how are we implementing systems of Indigenous data sovereignty and data governance in a way that can be observed? So we're going to kick this morning off with our executive liaison, Ashley Montour, and she's going to be talking about the ways in which the Survivor Secretariat is working with terms of Indigenous data sovereignty and data governance. So Ashley Montour is Oneida Nation Turtle Clan from Six Nations of the Grand River, where she continues to live and raise her family. She is an intergenerational survivor as both her maternal and paternal grandmothers, along with many relatives, attended the Mohawk Institute Residential School. Ashley now serves as executive liaison with the Survivor Secretariat. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in Indigenous Studies and in Human Rights and Human Diversity, as well as a Master of Arts in Social Justice and Community Engagement, all from Wilfrid Laurier University. Ashley's work and research focuses on Indigenous data sovereignty and governance with a strong commitment to ensuring survivors, their families, and their communities have access to the information that rightfully belongs to them. In her role, she works closely with the Survivor Secretariat Board of Survivors and Secretariat Lead Laura Arndt to carry this vital work forward. If everyone can join me in welcoming Ashley to the stage.
Hi, everyone. I am Ashley Montour. Sorry. Which one do I press to move? Okay. Okay, let's start. So Scano, again, Micah's way taller than me. So Scano, good morning, everyone. I want to begin by honoring survivors here with us today and those who are with us in spirit. Everything I share today is for you and because of you. This presentation is called Indigenous Data Sovereignty and Indigenous Governance. Those might sound like technical terms, but what it really comes down to is this: who controls our truth? Who has the right to decide what happens to the experiences of our children, our families, and our nations? I know that throughout this gathering, the word sovereignty has come up many times, and that's a good thing. It means we're centering our rights, our voices, and our nations in every space. But today I want to speak about sovereignty in a way that we do not often hear about, through the lens of data, because sovereignty doesn't only live in our lands or our laws, it lives in our lives and in our stories and experiences, in our names, and in the records that tell our truths. What makes this conversation different is that we are talking about who holds those truths, who decides what is shared, and how we take back the responsibility of caring for our own information. This is about sovereignty over memory, over truth itself, and what happens when we return that responsibility home to our communities. My arrow. Oh, not going. Oh, there you go. Okay, thank you. So who am I and why does this work matter? So my name is Ashley Ventura again. I am Oneida Nation Turtle Clan of the Six Nations of the Grand River, where I continue to live with my husband and our 2 children. Perfect. And like so many other First Nations families, our lives are rooted in community. In the winter, you'll find us at the local hockey rink. In the summer, at the lacrosse arenas, surrounded by family, friends, and the sound of the Creators game. But I'm also an intergenerational survivor of the Mohawk Institute Indian Residential School. Both my grandmothers, my grandfather, great-grandfather, and many other relatives attended. That story, like so many in our nations, has shaped who I am and why I do this work. To honor my family, to remember those who never came home, and to help communities reclaim stories and experiences that were taken from us. When I speak about records, data, and sovereignty, I don't speak from theory. I speak from lived experiences and responsibility. At the Survivor Secretariat, I work alongside survivors of the Mohawk Institute, piecing together the names of the children who never came home and returning stolen histories to families and communities, truths that Canada still holds locked away. This is not a job, it is a responsibility to honor the survivors, my family, the children who never came home. So the Mohawk Institute is Canada's first and longest running residential school, operated for more than 140 years. Thousands of children from over 60 nations were taken there. When they arrived, they were stripped of their names, their languages, their ceremonies, their nations, and most importantly, their families. This school became the blueprint for others across the country. Its legacy still lives in us, in our families, our languages, and the grief we continue to carry. So the scale of the challenge. Today, Canada still holds an estimated 27 million records connected to residential schools, with the number growing. So I want you to pause for a moment. 27 million, when you think about that number. These records aren't in one place. They are scattered across Canada, in church archives, government departments, universities, and institutions. This does not include the records held outside of Canada. For survivors trying to piece together their history or families searching for children, this means facing that wall after wall, gatekeeper after gatekeeper. The truth is not lost, it is being held, and that is the challenge we face. What we mean by data. So when Canada talks and says data, it usually means numbers, forms, and files in government cabinets. But for First Nations, data means something very different. It is memory, it is ceremony, it is story, it is language, it is the name of the child on a list. For us, data is not abstract, it is life. So data sovereignty and governance. This is why Indigenous data sovereignty and Indigenous data governance matter. Data is not just paperwork, it is memory, identity, and truth. Without access to our own information, we are denied the ability to tell our stories, to grieve our children, and to make decisions for our future. To keep it simple, sovereignty is the right and governance is the responsibility. Both are necessary if we are to protect our past and plan for our future. We often explain this through OCAP principles. Own our own information because it belongs to us. Control how it is collected and used. Access it whenever we need it, and possess it to physically hold and to protect. OCAP is not just a framework, it is a way of reclaiming care over our knowledge, grounded in community, ceremony, and responsibility. Why it matters to survivors. For survivors, data can mean a name on a list that proves you were taken there or that a relative attended. It can be a letter showing where a sister was sent when she never came home. These records allow families to hold ceremonies, to honor the loved ones, and to begin healing. Every piece of information returned is a step toward truth and towards closure. Canada's information management regime. So our rights to this information are recognized, yet still denied. Canada has built an information management system that keeps control in government hands. Records about residential schools are buried in bureaucratic processes, access requests, and policies that decide if and when Indigenous peoples may see their own history. The system was never designed for survivors. It was designed to manage information, not to share truth. Even when public promises of reconciliation, these systems continue to block access. They decide who is authorized to know their own past. These are not just delays, they are modern extensions of control. The ongoing impacts of control. The impacts are deeply personal. Survivors should not have to fight the same institutions that harm them to access their own truths. Families searching for children should not be told their information is restricted. When truth is denied, healing is delayed. When information is withheld, grief has nowhere to go. Behind every denied request is a person, a child who lived and died, a parent still waiting, a survivor carrying memories without closure. Structural and emotional barriers. Oops, right. So we have Canada's information system. Oh God, I think I have to move one. Oh, no, okay, sorry. The system adds more obstacles. Records are broken up into pieces, spread across federal departments, churches, and universities. These institutions act as the gatekeepers, deciding what is released, to whom, and under what conditions. Policies are written through a Western lens, one that values control over care. And because of a few of these institutions understand Indigenous knowledge systems, they rarely grasp what these records mean. To them, it's a document. To us, it's family. These are emotional barriers too. For survivors, opening a file can reopen deep wounds, yet records are often handed over without support, resources, without ceremony, and without care. Many nations want to care for their own data, but lack the funding or infrastructure to do it safely. And still, they must navigate a system built to restrict, not to share. This is not only access, it is about power, trust, and justice. Opportunities, healing, and empowerment. When survivors gain access to their own records, something powerful happens. They no longer have to fight for recognition. They can hold their stories in writing, in names, in memories that validate what they have always known. That access becomes a part of healing. It restores dignity where silence once lived. And it affirms that truths survivors have carried all their lives were never wrong. They were simply waiting to be heard. The opportunities for reconnection. For families, access is deeply personal. It means finding answers after generations of not knowing, learning where a loved one was sent, or finding a name that proves a child's life matter. For nations, it means restoring kinship, relationships, answers, and cultural flow that colonialism tried to erase. Each record that returns home reconnects families, communities, and ceremony. When truth comes home, it fills the spaces that silence left behind. There's opportunities in shifting power. Returning records is more than granting access. It is about shifting power. For too long, others have held authority over our histories, deciding what we are allowed to see or know. True sovereignty means nations decide how information is cared for, how it is shared, and how it is protected. This is self-determination in action. That is a quiet but powerful act of reclamation. Our stories in our hands, guided by our laws and values. The opportunities ahead are not only for today, but they are also for generations to come. When nations hold sovereignty over their data, their truth, their history, they can build archives, databases, and education systems grounded in Indigenous values. Survivors' voices can shape how history is remembered and how communities heal. Our youth will inherit truth directly from their own people, not filtered through Canada's systems, but carried in our languages, stories, and teachings. Knowledge becomes more than information. It becomes a living tool for justice, resilience, and healing. So some key takeaways today are in my presentation. Truth is sacred, knowledge is healing, and sovereignty equals responsibility. So in closing, when we talk about Indigenous data sovereignty and governance, we are talking about transformation. From control to care, from silence to truth, from loss to connection. Records stop being instruments of control and become instruments of healing and remembrance and truth. Survivors and nations no longer have to ask for access. They lead, they decide, and they hold authority over their own truths. The truth is sacred, knowledge is healing, and every time we return a piece of that truth home, we take another step toward collective healing. Thank you. So you'll be seeing a lot of me today because I'm moderating. Okay. Oh, yeah, I grabbed it. Here with Shannon. And the questions that are going to be asked are around data sovereignty and data governance. So if anybody is interested, you can go out to the front there and sign up. And also, if anybody is needing a shuttle bus for your departure date, so whether that's tomorrow or Friday, if you could please go to the front desk and let them know so that everything is arranged for you and that you can depart on time. And also, I think that's it. Okay, so we are going to start next here with Roberta Hill. And it's Reclamation in Action. So Roberta Hill is a Turtle Clan of the Mohawk Nation, survivor of the Mohawk Institute, and member of the Six Nations of the Grand River, alongside a 32-year career as a nurse. Roberta is an active member in her community and is committed to creating a better life for her children and grandchildren. Roberta dedicates much of her time to the Woodland Cultural Center's education department and shares Canada's dark history of Indian residential schools with visitors. She is also a strong advocate for the Mohawk Village Memorial Park in their efforts to create space for healing. Please welcome Roberta Hill.
Ooh, there you got my face right there. How do I work this?
That's just that arrow.
So it'll just scroll down?
And you can see it too.
Yeah, I don't want to see me. I have to look at myself. Whoa. Okay. This is kind of a scary time for me because I have a lot to say, and I just hope that if you have questions, I want people to ask me questions. I'm not afraid of questions. I would prefer to answer a lot of things. So what I wanted to start with, how do I get this going? Ha. Okay. So I was in the mush hole in 1957 to the beginning of 1961. And out of the 6 kids, we had 7 children still at home. And then with the loss of my father, the illness of my mother, 7 of us were orphaned, but they only sent 6 of us to the mush hole at that time. And the baby was kept in the Lady Willington Hospital. So that was where my beginnings start with the Mohawk Institute. And then from there, I would say that when I say lawsuit, you know, from residential school, I'll get into that journey later on. But as I grew up and I left the system of residential school and foster care, I went back to the reserve Six Nations, and I was really totally lost because I really didn't know who I was, where I belonged. But I had a lot of good memories of my childhood before residential school and about my family life there. And that's where that was my happiest time, being at home with the family. And so all I wanted to do as a mush hole kid, I wanted to go back to where I was happy. But when you return home, nothing is the same. You don't have your home. You don't have anything there that you recognize other than I knew that my family, some of my family members, like my brothers and sisters, were there. And so I connected with them. There was 2 different foster homes. The 3 younger kids were in one foster home at Six Nations. The other one was in another road over. He was in foster care. And then my older sister, when she was taken out of the mush hole, she was sent to the it was the Galt Juvenile Detention Center for Girls. So all of us were split up. And then me and my sister Dawn, we ended up in foster care from the mush hole in Durham County. So that's where that journey is. And it's connecting back to trying to reestablish those family ties. And that wasn't easy because you come back strangers. They don't recognize you. You don't recognize them, but yet you know that's your blood. That is who that is your family. So those are difficult transition years for me. And it was rough, you know, you don't fit in, you don't know, you know, you just don't know anything on how to deal with the situation you're in. So that's kind of that dark period where you misbehave a little, start drinking, you know, that kind of stuff. And so it took me 10 years, 10 years of figuring things out, making mistakes, which we all do. I'll take my share of the blame if I made a lot of mistakes, you know, and you learn to correct them and move on from that. So that's kind of where we were. And then in I'm trying to think. Gotta go back to my mush hole guys over here. When the class action first started, I think it was the survivors gathering in the 90s. And we were starting, and they were looking for somebody to sit on the steering committee when that class action, the cloud class action started. And really, I didn't want to do that, but they couldn't find anybody else other than, I think Lonnie's brother, maybe, Frank. He was there, and then I just kind of joined, and we met all these other mush hole guys, and then that's really where that journey began with that lawsuit. And that was in the 90s. And so from there, it went into this, the national settlement agreement, because that's where they wanted to move it. And we probably shouldn't have moved it then, but that's where it was. So from that part, the national settlement agreement was really, I would say it was just as damaging sometimes, you know, for them to put out what they put out, you know, and saying, you have to say in this lawsuit, how many times did they touch you? How many times did they sexually assault you? No, that's wrong. You're just re-traumatizing everybody because you have to go through the whole thing again, you know? And so I didn't like those things, but at least the one thing that I can say about the national agreement and even the cloud class action, it brought awareness. It brought us together as survivors. We could all stand up and we could all tell the truth. And it would be I think they'd be hard pressed to say, geez, all of Ontario, you guys are all lying? No, we're all telling you the truth. And that's where it was. And so from there is like in 1979, I think it was. I was a single mom, I had 2 kids, and I know I needed to do something different. So that's when I went back to school at that age, and I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and that's where I went back to college. I graduated, became a registered nurse, worked in nursing for 32 years, retired from there in 2012. But in the meantime, I was starting to dig into the archives and figure out just what the heck happened. It wasn't just my life. I just remember all the little faces at the mush hole, all these little kids. They went through the same thing, you know? But there's also a lot of other things that people need to understand about these residential schools. So the Mohawk, everybody knows the Mohawk was there in 1831, closed in 1970. And sitting back at this table, I think we've got about 4 generations back there. That was just at the mush. That's just one table that was at the mush hole from into the 40s. Shirlene closed the place, 1970. You know, so we all have a history. We can talk about that history. Okay. So after that class action, the cloud class action, I began to really question because I really didn't know about the history there. I just know that I was in the mush hole. I know what I experienced as a little girl, and I was 6 when I went in, 10 when I left, but I still wanted answers, you know, because when you're being abused there, if you've ever been sexually abused and whatnot, it changes you. You can't say otherwise. It'll change you, you know? So it just became a very fearful place for me. All I wanted to do was hide. But there's really no place to hide in these places. They'll find you, you know? And so it was scary. And so you have to learn to, I think, deal with trauma at a very young age. And one of mine was I could just go in my brain and you can't get in there. And that's kind of where I was. It's just block it out. And that's not healthy either. So I think it was, when we were doing the class action, I know there was Elizabeth Graham who wrote that green book, and that really helped a lot of people understand a bit. She covered some, but there was a whole other history to that school that she didn't get. She was just in the beginning phase of meeting with survivors. So it covered a lot, but it didn't cover all of it. And so as we were gathering, and I'm listening to other people talk about them, but I could also see with survivors, even when we were at the cloud class action, when they start talking, it's not just me who is fearful, who's hurt. I could see the pain. As soon as some of the survivors start talking, you can see the pain in them. And that's what we say is like, there was a war against children, Indigenous children in Canada. And so what I see, and what I think a lot of people will understand, and even today, I still see that hurt, you know, and it's the walking wounded. We're little soldiers. You had to act like little soldiers. That's the way they treated you. You had to line up, you had to march, you had to do this, stay silent, you know, endure all this. So it's a very regimented lifestyle. We were little soldiers, you know, and so the damage is there, it's still there, and we still feel hurt, but we've learned to deal with it, and these gatherings help us because we're all in it together. Different locations, residential schools across this country, we're doing the same thing. It's not just the Mohawks. Okay, so from there, it's getting the truth out, and I didn't know where to start with finding the truth. So for me, it was like somebody just happened to mention to me, "Why don't you look in Library and Archives Canada?" Well, I didn't even know what they were talking about for starters. And so I kind of like get on that computer. Those in my nursing days, that's when the computers were just starting up, and they made us. They taught us in the hospitals that you have to do this. You have to learn to work with computers because that's just the future. You're not going to get out of it. You learn that or you're not going to have a job. So that kind of opened the doors for me in the computer area. And once I found that, then I just Googled Library and Archives Canada, and geez, up pops this huge, it's like a big reservoir of information. But you still, even if you open up Library and Archives Canada, it is so massive. You have to know where to look. And so mine is just like stumbling through it. You know, you open up something, it takes you down this other little rabbit hole, you open up another one, and that's where it was. And it took me years to figure out what I was doing. But along the way, you do gather little pieces of information that are important that'll take you down another rabbit hole, you know. And so for the Mohawks, we have a history with the New England Company. That was the missionaries at the time. And I think they were coming up the Grand River way, way early, if I remember correctly. We're looking at the history. So they were already building schools and mission schools along the Grand, and all of our Six Nations were settled at different points along the Grand. And then I see that there's these federal Indian day schools, which we are all aware of right now. The federal Indian day schools on Six Nations, I think there was 12 altogether at different locations around the reserve. So that was all under the guidance of, I think it was the New England Company. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here, guys. But that's who was kind of running those things. So there was that agenda to, right from the very earliest of time along the Grand, is to Christianize, destroy the language, take away the culture, the ceremonies. That was all in place very early on in the history of the Grand River and the Six Nations Mohawks. And so the involvement, I think, with New England Company was a really long time. And what I found in one article was that there was somebody, I think it was an Indian agent or something. He had met with one of the teachers, of one of our federal Indian day school teachers, and they were having a conversation. And I see this in a document, is that they were discussing the effectiveness of having the federal Indian day schools. And that document said, no, it's not happening fast enough. They're not losing their language. They're still speaking their language. They're going home at the end of the day. And so the answer was, we need to take the children. There's your residential schools. So that's that side of the history. They weren't doing it fast enough. So here's how we can do it faster. Just take the children. All right, come on. Oh, criteria. Okay, the criteria for removing the children, I don't really know what the criteria would have been other than you just had to be an Indian. That's it. That's all, that's the only thing that I can see, like as far as their agenda. Was there anything good about it? I don't think so. Because when you're removing children, I guess from the perspective of Indian Affairs in Canada, they're being really effective. But for us, it's destroying families, it's destroying communities. What are those children going to learn in that residential school? What are they going to bring back to your communities? They now have kids who can't speak their language, who don't know anything about culture, ceremonies. You know, that's just the way it was. So the criteria for removing, I think there was a lot of things that were put into place, which I can get to after. Who was part of actually removing the children? I think was Six Nations. I know that there was, like I said, there was always an Indian agent from my earliest memory. There was always an Indian agent somewhere in there. But we also had, I think in the early 1920s, somewhere on, there was a truancy. And I think that's where John, our dear friend that passed away in January, it was always, how come he went to the mush holes? Because he was truant. He was on the trap line trying to help feed his families. But if you're caught outside of that school, you're a truant. They can pick you up and take you to the mush hole. So that's kind of where that was. And so I just remember hearing a lot of stories from Six Nations about kids having to run into the bush to hide so they weren't going to get picked up, that kind of stuff. And that's probably happened all over the territories here. You know, as nobody wants to lose their children, but then it became a fearful time where, you know, you don't want your kids there, but what else do you do? And when I think of the life that we had when we were younger, when my dad was alive, he hunted, he fished, he could speak Mohawk, you know, and then he passes away. That leaves my mom with 7 kids. And she did struggle. She really did struggle to feed us. And then she ended up having a breakdown and she's taken away. But it's just that this was going on all over the reserve, you know. It's like, why are you taking children? Because they could. And then we find out their agenda, you know, they could do it. And so I don't know that anybody thought of our best interest, because when I look at things, how much did it cost per head to keep that child in the mush hole? You could have given my mother that same amount of money and kept us home and fed us. All she wanted was to feed us. And it wasn't that hard. We grew our own gardens, that kind of stuff. You know, so there was always somebody who had chickens or pigs or something like that. Why could it not have been that system? It's because that's not what they wanted. They wanted you away from your community, away from the culture. That they wouldn't have achieved that agenda of assimilation. They just wouldn't have. So I think there's that part of the cruelty where this is deliberate. You could have fed our kids. You could have fed all of us and kept us all at home. That would have been the kinder thing to do, you know, more respectful thing to do. So who benefits from the removal? Obviously the government, you know. I mean, we were getting educated. They say you're getting educated. In one document, you see, well, we only meant well. We'll take your children. We'll educate them, you know, that kind of stuff. Look after them. No, that's not what the agenda was. It really wasn't. So I don't have too much mercy on them because they knew what they were doing and they attacked. It's an assault on all children, all Indigenous children, and that's who they knew that they could go after, because adults, you can't change them once they have their language and their culture and all that. You just can't. And so this is pretty devastating too. This is child abuse in a big way. No, to go after a child. Okay, so in my time, I don't think I heard about Children's Aid, even when I was in the mush hole. I remember when, well, we have an Indian hospital, and we did have one in Ohsweken. It was the Lady Willington Hospital. And I remember going there a few times when I was younger. And I think in order to get into the residential school, somebody couldn't just drop their kids off. There's a process, right? And what I understand is that Children's Aid, and I talked to Children's Aid recently, they were going to try help me find my records. And she says, you wouldn't have got there unless somebody had to do an assessment on you and your family. So I'd say Children's Aid were involved, but what I have trouble with is, where the heck were you when we were in there? We didn't see Children's Aid that I ever recall. Who was looking out for our best interest when we were in the school? Nobody. The only people that I remember being there were the people that could strap you. It would be the one administrator was the Anglican minister. The other on the boys' side was another minister. He was on that side. And then you have all these other staff people in there. But I don't recall any kind of social work help at all. On my records, I see that there was a federal social worker who was involved when they were moving us around. So I'm not too sure why they kept us isolated. Well, I kind of can guess why they kept us isolated. Is that why weren't we deserving of the same help? You know, why weren't we? You know? And that's what I don't understand. It's just that whole system of residential school is closed off, and it's closed for a reason, so that nobody can see what they were doing, the harm that they were causing, and what their agenda was. You know, and it wasn't that. Where's that one gone? So where did it go? How do I get it back? Okay, right there. Okay, as far as like medical records, I've been digging around and I'm looking for medical records and everything else. They're not that easy to access, medical records. I think during the cloud class action, and I had approached Ohsweken, the medical people there. We had federal nurses, and then we had the clinic. So I said, I want my records because I want to know what happened to me at the mush hole. They said, oh, sorry, too bad, we destroyed them all. I said, who gave you permission to destroy my files? And they said, well, the government did. So there you go. They were destroying files very early. And I don't know that they're all gone either, because every one of us had a registry number. If you look at your quarterly returns on the left-hand side at the top, it says registry number. We all have a number, and that means you're getting somebody's paying per kid. And so I think they could find a lot of information just on that. Psychiatric facilities. What I see in records is that I see kids moving around. That was one of the things that really caught my interest. And you know, as a kid, you really don't have any idea what's going on in the mush hole. If somebody goes, I wouldn't have been the wiser. I just wouldn't have, you know, if they show up, they show up. And if a kid is gone, they're gone. But looking at records, that kind of gives you insight into the movement. Like if a kid's bad, who determines who's a bad kid? But then they can move you. They can move you to other different facilities. One of them would be if they thought you were really out of hand or had some kind of a problem. Psychiatric facilities, there was kids moving. And I think maybe, Laurel, correct me if I'm wrong, there's a child, I think there was a psychiatric facility up in Aurelia. I just know that that's not the only place you could move them. So when kids are bad, you're either going to go to another residential school, or you're going to go to a work farm, or you're going to go to juvenile detention somewhere. And sometimes you might even end up in the jail system, you know. So kids aren't going to win with this one because we had no say. And I'll get to that one about the legal part of it later. But psychiatric facilities were TB hospitals. I can remember in the 50s when I was there in 57 to 61, I do remember going to the Brant Sanatorium because that was one of the other facilities within Brantford. So the Brant Sanatorium was where we would get sent once in a while, and you'd get those little pokes on your arm. And if you had a reaction, you'd end up having to get an x-ray. And so I do remember going there a couple of times, and, you know, we didn't know why, but now I think, oh, at some point we must have been exposed, or you wouldn't have been sending us there, because they were bringing some kids from the far, far north, which is now the Inuit territory. And they would tell us these kids are coming down, and maybe that's where the exposure was. And we'll look at them boxes of files. Indian hospitals. There's a big thing going on today with Indian hospitals, and that's that class action that's starting up. But Lady Willington, I can tell you about this one. Lady Willington was that hospital. I was born there in 1950. And I just remember seeing a record about the Lady Willington at that time of that year of my birth, is that they had a huge sewage problem in that hospital. And they said, oh, we want to bring a doctor in and a dentist. We want to build a residence. We better fix it. Well, why didn't you fix it before? You know? So it's only, you know, they were aware of these things, but they weren't going to do too much to solve the issue. And if you're talking about sewage, that's pretty dangerous. And so there's with this hospital thing, it's like I think there's 33 hospitals that have been named in that thing that's coming up, the class action. I think I've covered a lot of these. We did like the church is here and in England, where to look for records. Well, we did have a trip to England because the New England Company, that's them. So there was a lot of files over there, you know, it looked like falling apart volumes of files, but you know, you gain more information and you see where the money is and all that stuff. It's like a whole other department there. And there was a time at New England Company thought they owned the land at the Mush Hole. It was always Six Nations land. They could only use the land as long as that the Mush Hole was there as in an educational purpose. And after that, no, they were taken to court and they lost the right. They did not own it. It reverted back to Six Nations. That's why we have it today. So Department of Indian Affairs, they've been in there for a long time. Indian and Northern Affairs. These are all things that I find in files. In my time, it would have been citizenship and immigration. I think that's what we were under. So even though you could look in the files, you think you're just going to go into the Department of Indian Affairs. That's not where all the records are. They're scattered all over. So in my time, I know that we were under citizenship and immigration. And Mines and Resources was just before that. So under Indian Affairs, they've got all these little departments. And so you have to really understand. And it, you know, you could even contact Library and Archives Canada, and I'm sure they would help you sort through all this, because you can get lost in the files for sure. Health Canada. I'm trying to think why I put this one up here other than I don't know where they were as far as Health Canada. When I think of the care at the Mush Hole, and I think because the Mush Hole, what we had was, and all my buddies back there will know, we had an infirmary. And if you Google what an infirmary is, what's the definition of an infirmary? It's a small hospital, usually built in a residential area or a school. So we were a residential school. So that goes way back, probably to about 1917 or 1920. Like I seen another document that says we need to build a small hospital here. Okay, so in my time, there was a nurse there. She was on staff full time. They had hospital beds there. And they had a doctor, and it was Dr. Palmer, I believe. He oversaw the medical part of it at the Mush Hole. So there always would have had to have been a doctor that was associated with the with that infirmary. We either called it the infirmary, or I think there was another name, the infirmary, or I don't know what it was, but there was a couple of names, but the infirmary for sure. And it was a hospital. So when we were brought to the Mush Hole the very first time, we were sent from Lady Willington Hospital because we were so sick. 6 kids, and my records say the 6 Hill children are very sick. They have really bad colds, and they kept my baby sister at Lady Willington because she was so sick, and she would have been about 3. So we were brought into this infirmary. We did not go to the regular dorms where the girls had a dorm, the boys had a dorm. We went there and we were isolated there. And I do remember being in those beds. So that's a hospital setting, since I'm the old nurse here. I know the hospitals. And we were there for a while, and yet there was always somebody there. And in the records, it shows you all of the hospital supplies that they're ordering. I don't know if it was quarterly, but they always had to keep up their supplies. And some of them, they weren't just like Band-Aids or anything like that. And there was some talk about doctor needed something set up so he could do some little small surgical procedures, you know? And so to me, it's a mini hospital, whether they like to call it that or not, it was. And it would have been boys separated still from girls and that kind of stuff, you know, they didn't put us together even then. And I'm trying to think what else about this crazy place. Legal system. But anyway, that's where we are with the hospital stuff. And the legal system bothers me because there was no legal system for us. When I talked about the hospital, and just recently I got some new information from the wonderful people here that do all the research in Ryan. And I asked them, can you find out whether this nurse at the hospital is actually qualified? Because we knew her and there was some crazy antics going on. Was she really a nurse? And so the information I get back is, well, no, she wasn't really a nurse. She was a nurse for a little while and then she became a matron doing something else. And so what was this? What was going on? And if you look at Indian hospitals and the history of Indian hospitals were they were built under racism and segregation. They did not want Indians contaminating the general white population. That's written. And so what they realized was when we build an Indian hospital, we can do it at half the cost, if not less. And so that's where that was. That's where I say cheap healthcare, you had it here and at Lady Willington. And even in the library in Ohsweken, I see there's newspaper articles where there's 4 different people putting in complaints. They had been diagnosed in Ohsweken at Lady Willington. They had been diagnosed. They weren't getting better. They were getting sicker kind of stuff. They finally took themselves to the Brantford General, got a whole different doctor, different diagnosis, and they got better. And so you have to wonder what kind of care they were giving because we don't know the doctors that were coming in. Were they really qualified or were they just training? And that's something that I'd like to look at a little bit further. When were they qualified to work there? Because I see one of our guys, he's long gone from this world, but one of the doctors, it said he was hired full time in 1957. That was the year I come to the Mushel. He was hired as the doctor at Lady Willington. But yet before that, in 1956, I see that Ohsweken gave him an honorary headdress. I don't know what he did. I really don't know what he did. So he was in the community, and all of our guys that are older than me or, you know, around that age, they'll say, no, he was in the community. Was he really a doctor or was he not qualified? We don't know that. And that's things that you need to look at. What were the qualifications for these doctors? Or were you just practicing on us as kids? You know, so those are things that you have to look at. And the other thing that came up with the recent documentation that I found was, or not, I didn't find it, was Ryan. And it's kind of troubling because it says there was kids that were beaten severely, and we know that they were beaten so badly at the Mushel. Some of them were stripped naked and were beaten until they passed out. Some were shipped to the Lady Willington. Why wasn't it investigated? Why didn't that place get investigated and shut down? Even that hospital should have been investigated, but you send the kids back. These kids came back to the Mushel after being beaten severely. And yet the policy, according to the government, was you could only strap on the hands and not above the wrist. You know, and it's those kinds of things that I find really troubling. And I can remember my friend who's passed away too, Bud, telling me that at one time, Dr. Palmer was up in the infirmary area and he had another man with him with a suit and tie on, and he doesn't know who the other guy was. So he's telling me about this story, and he told a bunch of people this. He says, I don't know why they called us up other than he said they made me bend over and they shoved a needle in my spine. And he said, I remember it because it hurt so much. So what was that? Is that experimentation? We don't know. He didn't know. You're told to bend over. You didn't have a choice. They probably would have forced you to bend over. So he said there's maybe 4 or 5 kids that had to go through that. And he still to the day You know, he did not know why they did that. But that's not, just as a nurse, you don't do that. You just absolutely would not do that kind of procedure in a hallway or wherever, you know, you just don't. Because that's a very sterile procedure and it can cause a lot of problems if things go wrong, you know. So I know that one for sure was wrong. And it's just what they could do, what they could get away with. So what else were they doing? If you can do that to a child as some kind of experiment, what else were they doing? You know, so I think we need to look at those things too. And the court system, Truancy Act, Juvenile Delinquency Act, there's all kinds of stuff that are put into place. And I seen one article fairly recently about a traditional fellow who wanted to use his own medicine, not the pharmaceutical kind of stuff that's out there. He did not want to do that. And they went after him. And basically it boiled down to, we'll arrest you. You know, we'll arrest you and put you in jail if you don't follow what we're saying that you have to follow in our medicine. You know, so he was forced to get into that system, and that's wrong. That's another assault. And so with jails, juvenile detention centers, oh, that was big time in our time, I think. Courts, I don't know. When I think of the court system, who was the advocate? Who was our legal representative when kids got into trouble? I don't know. Was it Skin? Probably. He was your legal representative, but he was also the biggest abuser there. He can go to court with you or for you. I don't know how it works. I never got to court. But I think there was something wrong in that system where you've got a closed off system where only one person controls everything, and that would have been the minister, who was the administrator. And yet he can, like, I'll give an example of my older sister, where she did something, her and her friend did something wrong. And he has them two up in his office. He makes the one strip half naked, pull her pants down, so she's standing there half naked while he's beating her butt. And when he came after my sister, she wouldn't do that. She kicked him, sent him flying. She gets to court. She has to go to juvenile detention. That's an assault on my sister. That was an absolute assault. He was not allowed to ask any kid to strip naked at all. And yet, who was there? Who was there to protect us as children? I don't recall anybody like that. But we always knew there was that threat of juvenile, you know, being sent somewhere, you know, if you're bad. There was always that, you're a bad girl, you know, those kind of things. And so we could get punished as children for fighting and all the rest of that stuff, but nobody is going to be ever able to go after the adults who are assaulting, sexually assaulting, physically assaulting children. It just didn't work that way. So it put us all in really a dangerous situation. And I can see the fallout from all of this, that when you do this to children, even at a very young age, they're being abused, is what are you teaching these children? What kind of legacy are you leaving with them? Is it okay? Is it okay to abuse? A lot of times they didn't know any better, because those early beginnings, it's like language. Language is important from the day that the day you're born, if not before. It's so important. You're learning all the time. And then when you put a child into this dangerous institution, what are we teaching children? It's okay. It's okay to abuse. It's okay to sexually assault. And then they can bring that back into the communities. And I still see some of that fallout today, where maybe people who haven't been able, they've come out of the mush hole, they have not been able to deal with the issues. They were abused, but they became abusers themselves, you know, and that's dangerous, you know. But I blame this whole system. It allowed it to happen. It did not protect us as children, not in any way. So let's hope it never happens again. But children should always be protected. They should be given that love, that guidance. Those early teachings are really, really important for the growth and development of a child. When I look at my grandchildren today, and I can listen to what they're talking about and the things that they're learning in school, and that's really good. They are starting to learn the language. They know their history, and I just think, like, I want my grandchildren to grow up in a healthy environment. I don't want people abusing. No one should want a child to be abused. No one. And so that's the future. You want healthy children now, so we can have healthier adults, healthier communities into the future. And what I see is a lot of the younger people are getting their education really smart. I'm very proud of them all, that those are our future. They need to carry on and make sure that what we're saying now does not happen again. It should never happen. And so I'm always, like I say, I'm always hopeful for a better future, for sure. And so, oh, where am I? Jails, juvenile. Yeah, I don't even know. There were so many places that they could send kids in the juvenile detention centers. When you think of all the work farms and that, there's all kinds of places that they could go. And yet the perpetrators themselves never get touched, but yet young kids get to go into these jails or whatever it is. And the kids that went into some of these places will tell you, they'll say sometimes it was worse than the mush hole going into these other juvenile detention centers. Mental health institutions, yeah, work farms, yeah, I think it was earlier on, they were trialing work farms that if they worked kids all day, they'll tire you out and they're going to change your attitude because you're going to be so darn tired and wore out and whatever. You know, it was another trial thing. Was this going to work? Whereas to me, as a mother, as a grandmother, you don't have to do that to kids. You really don't. Be kind to them. That's what I say. Be kind. Teach them the good way. Teach them to walk in a good way. They don't have to be. Punishment and brutality is only going to lead to them being probably brutal, you know? So that's kind of like a backwards thing for me. And even though, like, you don't learn these things until you're older. It's like, okay, I probably failed with my kids, but at least I can understand it and recognize it, you know? So teach the next generation of children, your grandchildren. Here's, you know, I just like to teach them so that they don't have to be put in these situations. And I think that's a good thing. Oh, legal protection. Oh my gosh. Did we have any legal protection? Anybody? I don't think so. My understanding was we had no legal rights. We had no human rights. So where does that leave us? I want answers as to how you can take children. If we don't have any human rights under the Criminal Code of Canada, we don't have human rights, we don't have legal rights, then how can you take us? How do you work that into your court system when there basically was saying before, there was a time where we didn't. Now it's changed. I think maybe that legal beagle Bev is in here. But I think when we were talking to the late Murray Sinclair there at that one meeting, he said, no, you did not have human rights. You don't have legal rights. So where's that leaving us? That really totally left us unprotected. They could do what they wanted. But I'm saying in a court system, how do you have the right to judge anything on me if I don't have those rights? Why am I even in your court? See, so it's always stacked against you. It doesn't matter whether you have rights, because here's what we're going to do to you. I don't think it's right, but maybe they can argue it. And child labor, there's a whole other issue with that one. This is kind of where when I look back on my time at the mush hole, and I talked to the one lady. She's still around. She looked after me in the mush hole. She was the older girl, and she might have been 12 or 13 when I was 6. So she looked after me, and I just know, like, maybe about 10 or 15 years ago, we got talking, because she's out in BC, and we got talking about this little baby that was at the mush hole. And I'm thinking, why would you have a baby there? But she said they were told to look after this baby. The baby was in diapers, needed feeding and changing, that kind of stuff. And the younger girls, and I think she said around 12 or 13, these girls had to look after that baby. And she said it had a putrid smell from its nose and its mouth. And then just recently she said, oh yeah, I remember the baby had a really distended abdomen. So anyway, they passed this girl around. I said, how long did you look after the baby? She said, oh, maybe a day and a half. And we had to pass the baby around to another person, another girl. And I said, so what did you do with the baby at night? She said, did you give it back to the nurse? Because we had a nurse on staff. She said, no, we had to sleep with that baby. And so she said, then one day the baby is gone. So why are minor children looking after a very sick child? That's criminal right there. You know, that they put, if the baby, Is it because they don't want to spend a few dollars to send it to the Brantford Hospital? Or even to the Lady Wellington? We don't know those answers. The baby was just gone. And I think of all the times when I've listened to some of our men today talking about all the labor that they had to do. Along with the labor, they were also assigned childcare. Like our good buddy John, he used to look after the little guy. He had to change him, shower him. Even on the girls' side, it would have been the same thing. The small kids, they had to be looked after. One of the guys that I know is still around today, he said when he was little, he was about 3. He was actually put on the girls' side because the girls had to change him and look after him. So what I see is they're using the children as child labor in healthcare. They could have brought in a healthcare aide to do all of those things, which they should have done. We were students. We weren't nurses. And we were minor children. So why are you getting minor children to do these healthcare duties when you should have brought some? It's all about the dollars and cents, really. They really didn't care. And so that's some of the things I see. And they even like a lot of kids were doing labor all the time. And that's how the institution ran, because it helped offset the administrative costs, right? So they were saving big time, but it was at the child's expense. So if you don't get all the education that you think you should have got, it's because you were doing all these other jobs that never should have been there. And I think the other thing that I just found out recently, and yet I kind of knew this, one of our friends, like when we left the mush hole, me and my sister were put in foster care in Durham County. And when we got there, there was 3 boys from the mush hole. We knew them. And then they moved them on, and then they brought a total, there wasn't 9 there altogether, but a total of 9 went through that one foster home. And then I find out the lady that was my friend that looked after me from, she's out in BC. She said, yeah, I went through Durham County as well. She graduated from the same high school I did. So it's that movement. They were moving kids up, and I don't know why Durham County. But that's what they were doing at the time. And I thought, oh, and then there was a couple other kids. This foster mother had a friend that she knew, she had 2 kids from the mush hole. So it was that big push at that time. And so is it the push because they know they're going to close the mush hole? We got to start doing this push to put kids into foster care? Probably, because there was a big, I think it's that 60 scoop, if that's what they called it. And I think it was, is how many kids can you have to put them somewhere, because long term they know they're going to close this place. So where do you put the kids? Foster care seemed to be the answer at that time. And so we went through 3 different foster homes, but it was all up in Durham County. And then the other thing that I found really troubling was my friend, when I look at my records, I'm looking at quarterly returns, and I got all my records that they could give me from the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. And my friend's saying, well, you know, she was put into foster care too. After this, she went to Durham County after, but prior to her going up to the Durham County with us, she said she was taken to Vermont, the state of Vermont. And she was just a little girl. She was there in 55, and she wasn't much older, maybe a couple of years later, I think in 58. And that's where I see, like, where's my records for 58? Where's my quarterly returns for 57? I don't see that. But she said, it wasn't just me that they took. She said there was 2 other kids in the mush hole that they took at the same time. They ended up in the Vermont foster home. Now, you tell me how that works, because I have no idea. That means there has to be a line of communication. Somebody just doesn't come from Vermont and say, hey, you got some kids I can have? There has to be something that was in play. And so with that one kind of fell apart, because she said she did go to school down there. She remembers going to school. She got a passport. They took her to Mexico for a couple of weeks, I think she said, because the lady was teaching art or something in Mexico. And so when they came back, this couple went to her dad's house. And I don't know what she was trying to do. Even my friend didn't know, but their dad, they already took his kids away. He took his daughter back and says, she's, you're not getting her. So he kept her, but she ended up going back into the mush hole after that. So she didn't stay in Vermont. She ended up back here, and so did the other two. And so, like, I want to know what else was going on. And I do remember in my earliest research of finding Indian babies for sale. And sometimes you could buy a baby for 10 grand. Sometimes you could just adopt them, you know, it's that kind of stuff. So there was that time period where Indian babies were just kind of, oh, you want a baby? Here's one, you know, and it's just disgusting, you know. And you look at some of the things that I was looking at is this one little girl, young girl. She just said, I was young. I was helping my mom. She had to go do something. I was helping her do laundry, and the little ones were there, and they just came and took them. Like, there was no need to do that. There just isn't. So I don't know. It's that if you look at the bigger picture, it's the extermination. It's the indoctrination of Indigenous. Take them all away. Don't have to answer for anything. You don't have to worry about lands and resources because we'll have it all. And you'll work for us. That's kind of what they were saying in the early on. We're going to teach you to be the domestics. You'll work for us. And so when I heard about this thing with my friend, I thought, boy, there's a bigger picture here. I want to know more, but I don't know how to find those in the documents. But we've got some pretty brainy people here that probably could figure it out. There has to be something that allowed this, but there should have been records in the Zimmerman skin, the guy, the administrator. You would think that there would have been records, but like I said, in my time when she was gone, I cannot find 58. I've tried the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. I don't see her there in 58, but I do see her back in the mush hole in 59 with a new number. So I know she was gone, and she's told me she's gone, you know. So it's those types of things that people have to look at. Where were they taking the children? Who allowed them to take a child out of the mush hole, to take them into the state of Vermont? Who does this? And on whose authority? That's what I'd like to see. Where's this document that says you can come up here and take a child? Any child you want, you know? I don't know. Maybe somebody here has answers. I don't know. But that's kind of where I am. And the child labor, it bothers me because there was a whole bunch of kids that were child labor. That's how you offset the costs. That's really what they were doing. And there I am. Any questions? No. I hope I haven't upset people, but that's the way it was. Yes. That's only a small amount of what it was.
Residential in Saskatchewan. I know that the dentist experimented on this without and
The freezing?
yeah,
Yeah.
so like the whole school, the dentist come in there and pull your teeth and do whatever, and you just had to lie there and take the pain. There was no
Yeah.
numbing or no whatever, nothing for you. So
Well, this is just it. And it was always about the other record that I saw was with the dental stuff. They had a dentist come in once a year, and he looked at, I don't know, maybe it was 80 students that needed dental care. He gave them. Then he said, but I have a whole bunch more that still need it. And they said, too bad. It's not in the budget. We'll get them next year. And then in the meantime, dental care is important because if you have rotten teeth, all that bacteria, it could go into your system and cause a lot more problems. So it was always about that.
no,
Dollars.
to this day, I'm terrified of going to the dentist.
I don't blame you, so am I. Yep. Yeah. Okay.
What else?
Oh, sure.
Bonjour, my name is Desiree. I'm an intergenerational survivor from here in Thunder Bay. I'm from Long Lac 58, which is about 3 hours away. My question to you, and I guess all of the survivors in the room, is just like how, as a young person, like I've had the privilege of being and hearing stories from like 3 gatherings. How do I like echo the stories, amplify the stories, like in a way that respects you guys and honors you? And just like, how do I make sure that what happened was not forgotten and echo it in the rooms that I'm in.
I think one of the things that we're seeing right now is that the younger generations are listening, which is really important because you are the future. You're what's going to move things forward in a better way. And so the more you can learn, but there's always, I would think, there's always resources about residential school. And if you went online, there's probably tons of it. I know even just with ours, the Mohawk Institute Woodland Cultural Center has got a lot of history there because that's where it was, right? So I think the more younger people I would like to see is to learn this history. If you don't know your history, you know, what are you going to teach what are you going to, there has to be some kind of a warning is that don't let this happen again, because here's what happened. We can make sure as the younger people, the younger generation, I want to stand up and make sure that my people don't go through this again. And so you do have a duty, and I'm not putting responsibility on you, but it's like all of us have a duty. So that's why we're here speaking. You know, we have a duty to tell you what happened. And I try to do that with my children, my grandchildren, and it took a long time for us to even speak. And that's why you're probably hearing about it now, because we were so terrified of even stepping up and speaking about those things. But once we found that voice, that ability, then we could do that. And now you're hearing, and pass it on. That's all.
Yeah, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunity to listen to you and to learn from everybody in this room. And this is my formal request to be invited down to Six Nations to Survivors Gathering there. Because I would love the opportunity to learn down south.
That would be good. We'd welcome you. Anybody else? Oh, one back there.
Hi, Roberta.
Hey.
This is probably before your time. The Spanish flu. When it came around in the Spanish residential schools, there was no doctors. So when there was a death at the school, there was no notifications going out. There was no phones on First Nation places. There was no way of contacting the parents that their child had passed. And on top of that, that child that passed, it had to be put into a grave less than 24 hours, within less than 24 hours. So we have some of that to deal with at our residential school in Spanish. And anyway, you didn't mention that, but you probably had that.
There was
at
Spanish
school.
flu. Yeah, there was.
Yeah.
And I did see that. And I think it was in the church records, the Anglican, maybe in the Diocese of Huron. I do recall seeing something about the Spanish flu, and there were a number of deaths. And I seen just some singular ones. Was that around 1917 or somewhere around there? Yeah. And I did see some young girls in the mush hole. It just said they're this age. If it was 12, they died. This next year later, this one died. So there was some deaths in there. And it probably was the Spanish flu, and I think it's documented as such. Yeah. Okay, and I think somebody over here wanted to, way over in the back there.
Good morning. My name's Debbie Lincoln. I'm Nishka Clinkett. I come from Kincolith. It's about 100 miles from Terrace, BC, Prince Rupert. Anyways, I wanted to let that young girl know, because it was very hard for me, because we were all brought up into different homes. My mom went to the residential school. So when I sobered up, I had to ask a lot of questions. It's a lot of work. Right now, I'm holding the torch because my older sister doesn't want to take charge. She doesn't want to. She's still into drugs and drinking, and so there's only myself and my sister. The younger sister, she passed away. Just only two of us in our family that sobered up, that gone to treatment. Anyways, I have to be a role model to my children and my grandchildren and great grandchildren and children to come. I find it very difficult because some days I don't want to stay sober. It was too hard. But the good thing about it, I went on a 22-week training on the water. I'm a canoe puller, not knowing where I was going to be today. And today I earned the seat and no one's going to kick me off my chair. No one. Anyways, I earned that. I earned this chair today. And by the grace of God, the Creator, I managed to come to a place in my heart and to learn about the spiritual walk. It was very difficult, and for me to do all that work with the suicide and being a drunk addict and did crazy things when I was drunk, and and I didn't care about my body. I went out with men and didn't care. I didn't really care because where I was at in my life. And I look back and I can talk about it. I felt ashamed of me. And I used to try to scrub my hands off because I was dark and because everybody called me a stupid Indian or crazy Indian. I'm dumb and stupid. You're not going to succeed in life. That's what I heard growing up. And I'm really grateful that I made it here. And I got in a car accident in 2003 and had a head injury and then dealing with cancer and got rid of my cancer the spiritual way. I got rid of it learning to take traditional medicine and I got better. The doctor said I wasn't going to walk from my car accident when I had a head injury. I couldn't even eat or anything. I had to do a laser on my face and I did everything and anything to better myself. And I'm totally grateful for everything I have today. And spiritually, my spirit woke up and I have a treasure box. And I was told to open up my treasure box and start sharing my tools and speak about what's going on with me. I used to be scared to get up and speak in public because I was scared you guys were looking at me because why the hell are they looking at me? That feeling. But you know what? You guys are all amazing. You're all amazing. It's so beautiful to take this trip and listen to every one of you. I've never had this good feeling and everybody that spoke in this event. And it's amazing because you guys get right down to it. You're not boring. You guys are amazing because I love it because, when I don't know what it is about BC. I just don't know. Maybe they're not educated enough. I don't know. There's something, maybe they need to wake up their spirit. And that's what I love about coming here. I see a lot of people walking in the spiritual way and sobering up. And that's what I love about it, and sharing their stories and their songs, their dances. I love it because when I was 18, I tried to commit suicide, came close to committing suicide. They put me in this this place called Women's Time Out. The doctor put me in there, the psychologist and the psych ward. They put me into this home called Mother's Time Out. It was all non-native. I was the only Indian girl, 18 years old. And you know what? Looking back, if it wasn't for them teaching me how to crochet, knit, to do crafts, do cooking, baking, you know what? For me, I'm learning to walk with all walks of life, to help people. And that's what I've been doing since they told me I can't work anymore. So I've been doing a lot of culture exchange and getting people's numbers, names, and so I can exchange culture with people like you. and having people coming to BC or to the Nishka, to the Nass Valley. And you guys are all amazing. You're all amazing. I just want to raise my hand to all of you. You guys are all amazing. Thank you.
I think half the battle is finding your voice. It's taken a lot of us a long time to speak. So once you find that voice, there isn't anybody that's going to shut you up. And that's what I say. Learn to speak. We should not have to be silenced ever. And that's what I say. Speak your truth. That's all we can do.
So I have Jenny Blackbird who wants to say a few words.
Bonjour, Kenoi, Mampika Pishajik, Quantum Mampiki Bishayek, Montic, we don't bong, Kashuabak, residential schools. Migananik, Kidomagoya, Sakatwin, North America, Sakatwin, Gishin Cotton. With all that, I was born and raised in a home where there was safety, and our parents and elderly people taught us love. And there was 10 of us in the family, and that was like the national anthem in our home. Sagatwin, Kapsin Dage. That means love one another and help each other. And all my brothers and sisters, we never ever argued. And that's the way we were raised. Elderly people, we always looked up to the elderly people. And this, what's happening now, these meetings that we're having, we're learning more about each other. And when I was in the residential school at Mohawk Institute, I was there when this best friend of mine, we used to play together, and then all of a sudden, we noticed that she always had her head down, and we would ask her, "Are you lonesome for home?" She would just shrug her shoulders, and later on, she disappeared, and we asked Zimmerman. They called him Skinhead, and he said that, "Oh, she's in a home. She's going to school in Brantford." But what happened was she got raped, and she had a baby. And what they did with that baby was they sold it to Americans. These are one of the horrible things that happened in the school. There's a lot I can tell you about, but I don't want to take up too much time. But I just want to say that our people, they were educated, not the white man's way. They got their education by using their eyes, their ears, and how they saw things. And they could predict the weather. And they were meteorologists, they were doctors, and we had our own pharmacies. Our pharmacies were in our backyards, in the swamps and the woods. And my husband was a commercial fisherman, hunter, and a guide. And when he would leave, he would say, "Well, I'm going to the grocery store." And we were land people. We were connected to the land. And I'm really glad to hear different ones mentioning about our people. And our people were smart. They weren't dumb. And there was no such thing as alcohol. We were the first people here in North America for thousands and thousands of years. And with that, we got our teachings from Shamdido, the very first teacher of all teachers. And this was passed down from our Kapinigan Siksijik, which means our ancestors. And we were taught all these skills. They used to tell us as kids, well, the whole community, the elders would talk about it. You were born with skills, and we are not dumb. And I heard Jagnash say, oh, those dumb Indians, those drunken Indians. But who's the one that created that? And so anyway, I just want to say that Chimiquech, Kidamiak Bumpy, I want to thank you for inviting me here. And my last words is, forever we will remain Kognik Panachiyayang.
Is there anybody else that would like to say something? Okay. Oh, right here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Florence Morrison. I'm from Moose Factory. No. And I attended residential school before. When I was born, we lived on the trap line, and I went to my mom took me to residential school, and I remember entering in there. But during that time when I stayed there for 7 years, and during my period there, I used to end up in the infirmary a lot, and I used to get boils, a lot of boils on my legs and different parts of my body. So I don't know why. And I remember going into the infirmary. The infirmary was on the 3rd floor of our building, and they used to. It was a nurse that took care of us, and she used to put some type of poultice and put it in this stove and heat it up. And I remember getting that done quite a few times. And during my time there too, I used to end up in the hospital. The hospital was across the road, like not too far from us, the Indian hospital. And it was quite a large hospital, but there was some Inuits used to be there for TB and all that kind of stuff too. But for me during that time, it was my years. My years were already always to be draining. So I don't know why that happened. But anyway, during when my mom was home from the trap line, one time she gave me a card. It was a red card, and for me to always carry and as in my travels that's I never knew what it was for, but to me I thought it was because when I was reading that card not too long ago, when I was looking through my stuff, it said mercury on there. So I don't know if anybody ever saw those kind of cards before, but anyway, that's what happened to me.
Is this thing on? I can address a little bit about the mercury, because when I was looking on those medical supplies that were coming into the Mohawk Institute, there was a cream that they were applying, and it had mercury in it. That's deadly. But and a doctor did point out that, oh, there's some problems with that. You shouldn't be using that. So I don't know when they stopped it, but I saw it on the list. So when you look at the medical supplies that are ordered in that institution that you were in, try to find those medical supplies and see what it was, because it sounds to me like, well, it's poison, right? But even just other things that you weren't being looked after very well, you just weren't. But that's the cheap healthcare, they really didn't care. But mercury, yeah, there was a cream. So yeah.
Is that all the questions? Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, yeah, perfect. Just remember that applause is for the bravery that all of you have to be here and to share and to provide space and all the things. So, Miigwech again. Miigwech, Mum. That's actually my Moose Factory, Mum.
Again, my name is Nicole. I just wanted to share a song to help with anything that you each as an individual need. So if I could just have everybody pay attention to themselves. Just give your shoulders a little shake and close your eyes. And picture yourself being in a room all by yourself or wherever it is your most comfortable place all by yourself. And just do some breathing, and you're going to only feel yourself and not anybody around you. You're just going to pay attention to you, because that's what matters right now, is just resetting yourself. And so please, I would like no pictures and no recording, because that's just something that I request. All the smiles, please. Keep them coming. Much love, friend. So yes, I'm going to share a song. Keep that breathing, keep that intention in self. Remember, you do have the tools to be able to stir up whatever it is that you need to get rid of. Miigwech. Oh my gosh. And my friend over here, just one second, my support Desire, he is also going to share, as we know that are more spirits than Gitche Manitou in this room here, addressing what it is that you need. There is also words from Desire to assist with other spirit. Miigwech.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. My name is Desire. I am a health support officer, and my job is to provide spiritual health support. I am a minister and ordained minister. I just want to share a prayer. Shall we pray? Creator God, God who made the universe, we give you thanks for this gathering. We give you thanks for the stories that we hear. We give you thanks for extending your hand of healing, of truth, of reconciliation. May you heal our hearts from all the pain that we went through. May you use your provisions in nature, the water we drink, the food we eat, our interaction as community to bring forth healing. May you hold us with courage that we may overcome all the challenges that we faced in the past and have enough strength to move on. May the Spirit of the Creator give us strength. Hear our prayer, we pray. Amen. Thank you.
Now we'll go for everybody who shared, and then very nice, very beautiful song. Thank you for the words. So next up, I just want to, for anybody who wasn't in the room earlier, just to let you know that there is a podcast sign-up sheet that is at the front there with Shannon. The interview will cover the data sovereignty and data governance and what that means to your community. So anybody wanting to share, again, it's up at the front. And again, anybody who is departing tomorrow or Friday, if you could go to the front desk and reserve your shuttle. So you just want to make sure that everybody gets to their gates on time and nobody's running through the airport. So in saying that, I know Debbie, I think it's Debbie from BC. She wanted to say a few words but I don't think that they're in the room, to Misty and Shelly. So we'll do that maybe when they return. Okay. So we'll break a little earlier, and everybody can take some time, and then we'll come back for noon, and we'll have lunch. And we'll have Sam say a few words, a lunch prayer. We're good? Okay, thank you.